Welcome to Alan Fulle's Art Interviews. I'm your host, Alan Fulle. I interview artists from the Pacific Northwest and beyond. Join me as we unlock the magic and mystery of these amazing artists. I'm interested in the techniques, process, tools, and approaches these artists use to make masterworks. Hi, Barbara. Welcome to Flight Path Studio.
Good to be here, Alan. Thanks.
So you've brought a really cool, so this is a photo, right? Would I consider this a photo?
Yeah, it's a composited photo.
Composited photo.
I didn't actually fly up there and take that.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
And what's the title of this piece?
It's called When You Wish. And that's a reference to probably wishing upon a star and also wishful thinking. And it was painstakingly made with shooting a whole bunch of pictures of these jacks with sitting on different surfaces to reflect different colors that would work with this background image. And the background image is a NASA Hubble photograph of a spiral galaxy. So when doing this series, the first part of the series, part one was called Likely Stories, which is of course not really true. And the second part was called Tossed and Turned, or Toss and Turn, which kind of refers to the idea of worry, because many of the pieces had a connection with the climate crisis and, you know, the Earth's place in the scheme of things and ours as well. So anyway, this process is similar in all of the pieces that I will set up photographs of the objects with a lighting that works in the image. So that takes a while to set them up, and I do bunches of photographs, especially the jacks, because I think there are about 20 of them, maybe more, in this piece, and they're all a little different. And then I also shot an image of the ball from the ball and jacks game and used it as a planet. It even has an equator. And then I composite the whole thing. I load them all into Photoshop. I also, a lot of times, change NASA's image. Sometimes I move stars around, not very scientific, but alter it to make it work well visually. And then move everything around until it works. And then there's a proofing stage and then doing the final print. And I have a smaller printer, the printer that I have access to through a service bureau with Todd Gangler, who does a great job helping me make prints that are large. I don't have a large format printer, so I do images up to the scale of another one I'll show you. And then the larger ones, Todd prints for me. So this piece actually, I wanted to read something from my artist statement, because I wouldn't necessarily remember this whole quote, but I'm dealing with themes of survival, awe, aspiration, and inspiration, while peering through alternating telescopic lenses of apprehension and hope. And that refers both to my past being enthralled with outer space. I actually wrote to NASA once asking if I could go up in a space shuttle. And that did not come to pass. But later, Laurie Anderson was talking about how she was a artist in residence at NASA, and she said she might be the last one, which might be a reference to maybe they thought it was kind of weird working with an artist, but I never got to go. But I got interested in outer space when I was pretty small, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, because a boy in my neighborhood who was Mr. Science made his own telescope, ground the lens and everything. And invited us all down to his house. And so I got to see Saturn and Jupiter and other celestial bodies. Although the thing I was most excited about growing up in Wallingford in Seattle was being able to see the PI globe and the pink elephant car wash, which he showed us through the telescope too. But I was enthralled with outer space after that. And in fact, when I was fairly young too, I had a dream that Saturn was big in our night sky here on Earth because there was a hole in the universe that functioned as a pinhole camera. And so Saturn has a special place in my heart. I have used it in some pieces, not this one. Anyway, making all of these pieces, there was a long process of hunting for photographs because a lot of them are too small to be able to scale up. So I hunted for the biggest ones and then improved them, taking JPEG artifacts out of them, altering the color and such. And so it's a very long process. I think people are so used to, like Photoshop, that they think, oh, that must have been pretty quick. You just throw a few things in there and it's done, but it's a much more involved process than that. Part of it, too, is a response to the sublime. I've always had a sort of a spiritual bent of, not religious, but seeing awesome things. In fact, that's where my work is going in the future, different from this work, but which I can talk about in a minute. And so part of this was also the hunt for home. It's people say, oh, well, if the Earth doesn't make it, we'll just go live on Mars. And I think that whole idea is absurd. But a lot of this searching in these pieces is like for another place. And I think, unless you had a question about this one, I was going to...
Well, did you tell us the title of this piece?
Yeah, When You Wish.
When You Wish. It's beautiful, and you have a good handle on photography and Photoshop. So you do that work yourself, obviously.
Yeah.
In Wallingford.
Yeah, that's where my studio is, in my house.
Nice.
I have a home studio. Which
I love
great.
Wallingford. I think it's one of the best neighborhoods in Seattle.
I grew up there too. And I went away to New York and California and other places, and then I came back.
Now, do you have art school training, or are you naturally taught, or how do you?
I have art school training. I went to Mills College for undergraduate school. Actually, they just kind of folded, I think. Northeastern University took them over. But I was an art major there, and then I went to Pratt Institute in New York for graduate school. So I got to live in New York and do things like go to a loft concert that Philip Glass had. It was great. I had a lot of exposure to other artists there. But I didn't stay because it was too expensive.
Sure.
And then I went to, I lived in Los Angeles for 3 years, and I taught down there. That's when I started teaching. I taught at Cal State Long Beach first, and then I taught at UCLA.
Nice.
And then moved back up here to teach at Cornish, and I taught there for several years. And then 2014, I left there to teach at UW Bothell in the interdisciplinary department. And then about a year and a half ago, I quit teaching so that I could spend a full-time amount of time making art.
Nice.
Which is great.
Yes.
I love teaching, but it's great to have more time.
Yes, right. So you have, you obviously have the space imagery, which I am so fond of. And then you have ordinary objects. Is this a common theme with your work? It seems like you have earthbound objects and mixing them with. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think there's a magical quality that that many people have in childhood. That anything's possible, and so a lot of the objects are from my childhood, games and toys and balloons. Some of the balloons were inspired by my daughter, who, at the time I started some of these pieces, was in grade school. And we used to go to carnivals and things, and she'd bring balloons home. And then one fateful day in the studio, there was one sitting on a table, and I was looking at an image of the Earth, just looking back and forth between them. And this aha moment happened, and I thought it was very funny too. And I use humor as both a lure and a balm, you know, that balm as in BALM, sort of subterfuge for serious subjects as well. So I loved the idea of this balloon floating in space, and so I hired some balloon artists to make different twisty balloons for me. 2 people in particular. I could try that, but I wasn't as successful as some of the more complex ones. And then I also there was an image that had a balloon that looked like a balloon flying around the room, which would not be possible to take pictures of. So one of the balloon artists showed me how to make it look like that, where it's a balloon just with the stem that you blow into that looked like it wasn't tied. And shall I reveal how? Maybe not. I don't want to dispel the magic, but I didn't bring that piece today, but it's a piece that looks like there's this balloon flying around the Earth. Mm-hmm. And I think of the balloons also as kind of living beings because they're full of air, like a lung. So there have been pieces called breathing in or breathing out because of that. So to answer your question, it's basically objects that have had resonance in my life, and many of them are from childhood. Paper airplanes and little figurines and various other things that to me seem hopeful, even in a context that can be, infinite like this. I think it makes them more relatable without dissipating any of the awe involved. So I wanted to read another quote here. This Michael Darling, who used to be a curator here at the Seattle Art Museum, now is in Chicago. No, actually he left Chicago too. He's doing an independent business. Anyway, about a piece that was from this series. It was actually the one that had the balloon that looked like it was flying over the Earth. He said, "Everyone knows this is an impossibility, but it's done so believably, and we give so much credence to hyperreal photography imagery that it opens up a crack of doubt and wonder in one's consciousness. What if?" And I loved that quote. That refers to another idea. In fact, the title, Likely Stories. I'm trying to create this believable reality, believable, and you can get sucked into that, even though you know it's a lie. That's kind of a pertinent issue now too with deep fake stuff, but I think mine are obviously fake, one would hope, but they can give you a flight of fancy nonetheless.
Definitely.
Would this be an okay time to show
Sure.
the work too? I don't know if the box is visible in the shot. This is the kind of paper I use. It's Hahnemühle fine art paper. I brought a print that isn't framed, so you can get a feel for that too. I'm not sure you can see much of the surface on camera, but this is actually one of the twisty animal balloons. Is this high enough to be visible?
Yeah, I think so.
That a balloon artist made for me, and then it's flying over. This piece is called Ninth. This is the Grand Canyon, so that's the Colorado River. This piece is from last year, I think. Yeah, 2022, and relative to the climate crisis too. This the Colorado River. Many people probably realize that the level of water in it is going down. So I thought it was kind of pertinent relative to climate crisis issues. And the balloon is a cat. And in Photoshop, I made its ears a little pointier. I couldn't make the balloon do that, but and ninth refers to the ninth life of a cat, and it's also an homage to threatened feline species, like there's a cheetah and a kind of leopard that are threatened species. So it's all those in one, and yet it's also this bizarre, humorous cat floating impossibly high above the earth. And this is a NASA image from the Johnson Space Center.
It's really nice. I like the colors and the details. The focus is great.
Thank you. So I will put this back inside. This kind of print, it's a archival pigment print on the honeymeal paper. They're archival, but the surface is somewhat delicate. It's kind of powdery. So especially the black areas can get scuffed easily.
Sure. You mentioned spiritual perspective. I'm curious about, because when you look at space, sometimes it has that kind of magical, spiritual impression. You get a sense of wonder. What are your, explore that a little bit. How does that make you, how does that inform you or express your vision?
Feels good. I seek it out a lot of the time. Like I went on a trip to Arizona and in 2019, and it's a dark sky community around Sedona, and I had never done this before, so I went to. It was sponsored by an astronomical society, I think, where they took you out into a really dark area away from any city lights, and it was so dark I could not see where I was going. But then they did a star talk, pointing out different things, and then they set up a telescope. It was fantastic. I mean, the Milky Way is so obviously there without all the lights emanating from Earth. It was truly awesome. And I might do that again. I'm going on a trip to Hawaii in a couple of months. And parts of Maui are dark skies community too. Those are actual designations, I guess. So I love all that stuff. Seattle is hard for it. The other day there was supposed to be, maybe they're still there, but we can't see them. 4 planets lined up under the crescent moon. And it was cloudy every night since then, even when it was sunny during the day. So once in a while there's also a great lunar eclipse. And actually for the solar eclipse, I went down to Madras, Oregon for that and shot eclipse photos, some of which are on my social media if you want to go check them out. At b.noah.art is my Instagram location. And I rented a special lens and learned how to use this special filter as well so that I wouldn't wreck my eyes, and took photographs of the eclipse. It was awesome. The temperature dropped radically as the sun started to get covered up. It was I had not expected that, but there weren't enough birds around where we were to notice if they stopped tweeting, but I guess they're supposed to. So maybe it's awesome for the critters as well. I don't know, but it was a fantastic experience. So yeah, I seek out that sort of thing. And the work that's to come will actually reference that as well. One of the things I decided to do after I quit teaching was explore new media. So I'm exploring video and shooting all kinds of footage. I'm not exactly sure how it's all going to go together yet, but I love that experimental phase which is how I come up with any of the work. Without thinking too much initially, I'm just trying things. And then things coalesce and come together conceptually and in terms of form. And I just learned photogrammetry to shoot photographs of an object using a program called Metashape, which is not easy to learn because their manual is not very forthcoming, but I have learned how to use it. There are a few other tweaks I still have to make, but I made a 3D model of a dahlia, which I think ball dahlias are amazing. They're this perfect structure. And I made one that you can see from all angles and turn it and everything to use as a 3D asset in 3D motion, or to use to make a 3D printed sculpture. But I have a few more, it's always the way it is, I have a few more pieces of equipment to buy before I perfect that. A new method of lighting the object, because the shadows confuse the program. But I'm learning that, and I'm poised to learn animation and manipulation of video images. So I'm working like this, spread out, try this, this, and this, and then I'm going to focus it at some point. But the process is so much fun. I don't know exactly when that's going to happen. I've been shooting a lot of images of and videos of things that are working together, like Dunlin birds, the ones that all change direction, all at the same time, miraculously. Because up at Camino Island last summer, a flock of them came right up to me, and they landed next to me, about 100 of them, maybe more. And then they kept landing by me, and then they'd get up and all, do the thing they do. And then they actually flew right past me. Like, none of them hit me, but I missed that shot because I was sort of shocked. But it was amazing. I find that sort of thing awesome, too. So I'm thinking roughly that I'll be using natural phenomena of various kinds, to express different emotions. And that's also gotten me into using AI, which, I've been reading a lot about lately, and, some people find it horrifying. I see it as another tool. So I started playing with it. And I'm doing, I'm using stable diffusion, not Dolly. Dolly's results aren't quite what I want, but I had so much fun doing it. I've been working on some images recently that I would get obsessed. I'd do one, and I'd do another one, and another one all day, and time just flew. I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I think you really do have to direct it as an artist, because what you put in as a prompt totally determines what happens. And then you can tweak that prompt. I have another friend who's working with AI, and he does the same thing, where, add another word and see what happens. And I'd say that probably 95% of the time I don't like what I get, but that 5% is fantastic. So I'm in the process of figuring out how to upscale those, because they're fairly small with the program or the platform so far. But so I guess that continues the theme of awe, because I'm pursuing that now, but with different kinds of imagery. I don't know if there'll be a humorous aspect in those or not. We shall see. But, spider webs, and I'm finding that structures, the dahlia too is a structure, structures and things working together really interest me. That brings to mind more than one of the pieces I did from this series had marbles in them. And when I was a kid, I had a marble collection. I still have some of them, but used to actually play marbles. And it gave me a feeling of in a little kid way. It's like having all the gold doubloons or something. Having a lot of marbles gave me a sense of accomplishment. And so maybe there's some connection there that I'm so attracted to many of something. The other day I saw a photograph of an acorn woodpecker, and I'd never even heard of one, but they make little holes in the bark of a tree, not to hurt the tree, it's still on the surface, the bark area, and then they'll put an acorn in there. And the photograph was studded with probably thousands of acorns in these little holes in the tree. I love that. So there must be something about safety in numbers or something that appeals to me. So those are some of my current explorations coming out of this series.
That's great. I like your sense of wonder, and you're exploring and you're using tech, and it seems like you're doing all the right things.
Well, I don't particularly like having to know tech. I enjoy what it can do, but I'm not that. I wish I had a tech working with me, because like learning Metashape, it would have been a lot easier and faster to have somebody who already knew how to use it, and I just tell them what to do, and aha, I got it. But I'm having to learn the whole thing myself. There is a certain amount of satisfaction in that, but I'm also, sometimes I get impatient that it's taking so long to learn something. So, and I guess that's kind of AI, you don't have to learn as much, but exploring what the platforms are and whether or not they have onerous terms of service, and which some of them do, in my opinion anyway. So I could get things done faster if I had like a tech assistant or something, or collaborator. But I do like what it can do. And I think of pieces like this as being painterly, which might sound weird because it's very precise, but making them is a painterly process, like making determinations about light and contrast and tweaking all the edges. And for anyone who's used Photoshop, when you have a layer, you can put an adjustment layer above it and put a mask on it, and then paint through the mask to make an area lighter or darker. It's actually, that part is painterly to me, stylus on a tablet, and I'm painting on the photographic image. So they're tweaked in a very painterly way. So, yes, tech has to be my friend. There's another piece that I thought about bringing that was the Earth as a bowling ball. And that piece actually began back in 1980 when I did a piece for an installation at the New Museum in New York. They had a show called Outside New York, Seattle, and I think there were 8 artists in it from Seattle. And I did an installation there that had a figure of a bowling ball, and I had stereo sound in there, the sound of ball release at one end and the pin crash where the image of the bowling ball was, and various other objects in the room too. But I was using it as a kind of an early reference to climate change problems. The Earth was actually struck by an asteroid and it flipped in space. It changed where the poles are, and it caused radical weather changes and extinction of species and so on. And so I thought the bowling ball, making the Earth into a bowling ball by just putting 2 eyes and a mouth on it, was pertinent to, dangers facing the Earth and us. And it also looks like an emoji. At the time, emojis weren't a thing, but they are now, so I revived it. And I used that image as part of this series too. A couple of different sides of the Earth. It's hard to find an image of the Earth through NASA or Hubble or anything. It doesn't have a shadow on it. So I had to do a lot of painting on a couple of those too, where I painted the shadows out. Shadow side are kind of streaks going through the images. And so that ended up being a painterly process too. But I think the original one from 1980, the city owns it, City of Seattle. And I think there's a city building. I haven't seen it there, but someone else told me they saw it because they moved their collection around. It's like looming in a big hallway near some elevators somewhere. But that image, I think, more directly than any of the other work, speaks to the climate crisis in a way that seems amusing, but it's not really. Do you have any other questions about this or this work?
So, do you typically work in this scale, or do you have larger pieces?
I have some.
You
that are
said
larger
that
than
those
this
are
one.
kind of what you can print, but
Yeah.
But when you work with printers, do you get larger pieces?
Yes. The biggest I've done is 8 feet,
Wow.
and I could go larger. It's at a certain point it gets to be expensive to make prints that big, and then
Yes, it does.
framing them sometimes costs more than the print
Yeah, yeah.
because they're protected because of the delicate surface. They have to be. I have been exploring other ways of printing though. Dye sublimation prints, they can put sort of a coating on them. I don't think those are I don't think those are actually archival though. And I've been getting interested in the devices that allow you to show a photo with light from the back. But I haven't really explored that yet. In the experiments I'm doing now, I'm getting the concepts and images down, and then I'll figure out how they might be conveyed. But yes, I've done large ones. I've done several that are not, like this wide and a little bit taller than that. So, and the scale in this series was determined by the resolution of the image. So I would make them big when I could. There's another one I did with Mars. Actually, there's going to be one of those related pieces is going to be in a show at the Museum of Flight in June, I think, is when it opens. And it's an image of the surface of Mars where I had to paint out the rover, speaking of painting in Photoshop. And so the rover's gone, and I put my own rover in there, which is an octopus balloon that's 2 tones of blue. And that was pertinent. The piece is called Red Rover, as in the childhood game. And it's a reference to the rover, which was the name of the Mars explorer at the time. And it looks like Arizona, actually. I took some of the butterscotch sky out. Mars has kind of an oppressive, in my opinion, looking sky. So I lightened that up, being unscientific once again. And it's got this octopus balloon floating across the Martian landscape, and I'm delighted that it's going to be in a show at the Museum of Flight. I think I'm perfect for that location with my many flying objects.
Yeah, it sounds great. So where else can we find your work? You talk about this show coming up at the Museum of Flight. Are there other venues or places that we can see your images?
Well, my gallery in town is Davidson Galleries.
Uh-huh.
I don't have a show up there at the time, though,
Right.
at this time. There's work in different public collections. There's work at Harborview. I also did an aquarium at Harborview. Totally unrelated to this work. So when I've done public work, it's been site-specific, and that's not necessarily what I normally do. Not just in various collections around town. I don't have any other exhibitions planned right now. And I'm not sure exactly what form they're going to take in the future. They might be installations, which I've done before, but not with so many different mixed media. Maybe some of you have seen the Earth is Bowling Bar in that unknown lobby somewhere in Seattle. They're scattered around different public buildings as well, and I never really know where they are because they keep moving them around. I've been in show. I was once in a show at the Seattle Art Museum, and they didn't tell me I was in it, so I didn't even go to the opening. That was a show. Well, it's probably a decade ago or so. It's called Shadows and something. But institutions don't always inform you. I have a public piece also at the Canal Substation in Ballard that is called Physical Power, and it's got, it kind of shows different kinds of power besides electrical power, but in a power station. So there was power of the law, power of the mind, of physical force, and love, which is two people kissing in the window. And the neighbors like that one the best. That's, I think it's 8th Avenue Northwest in Ballard, just up from Leary Way. So that too isn't related to this work, but it has an element of awe to it as well. So I can't give you any other locations to go see work right now. There's some in the Seattle Art Museum collection. Yeah. And I'm hoping to show more outside Seattle than I have recently. I used to exhibit a lot around the country, and part of that was because where I lived. And living in Los Angeles, it was very easy to be asked to be in different shows because it's a bigger art city. And so I didn't really even have to make much effort. I would get invited to be in different shows. I was invited to be in a show at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art that was curated by their photo curator, Van Darren Koch. And I was in a show at PS1, which is now PS1 MoMA in New York. And these were all just, serendipitous people you meet and people who see your work at other shows. It's much harder to do that from Seattle, because even though there are a lot of artists here and a lot of work going on, it's not a big art center like LA, New York, Houston, Chicago. And so you have to make more of an effort to show outside the area. But I plan to do that.
Good.
I got to show in China and Russia and
Oh, really?
Italy, yeah. In China it was at the Shenzhen Institute, and in Paris it was I don't know, my French isn't very good, but La Jeune Graveur Contemporaine, I think. It was a young printmaker's show. And Italy, I showed at Palazzo Pio, which is where the UW Rome Center is, after teaching in Rome taught there for 5 summers. And China, Paris, yeah. I used to have a lot of contacts because of I lived in New York too, so when I was going to grad school, and met a lot of artists there. Just much easier. I think Seattle is a great city, though. The reason I moved back here was to be close to family, and I'm glad I did that.
Well, what else would you like to share? Is there other things that you'd like to communicate about, or?
Well, I think I've about covered it, actually.
Well, you seem very accomplished, and you're making really beautiful work. And I really appreciate your coming over to the studio today and sharing with me and my small group of viewers.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thanks for watching Alan Fulle's Art Interviews. I hope you learned as much as I did about visual art from the Pacific Northwest and beyond. Please like and subscribe. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes coming soon. Thank you.